Ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much to everybody for coming here today for the AGM of the 1916 Relatives Association. Before we get underway, just a couple of things on housekeeping. In the event of an emergency, the fire exits are at the back of the room and at the back on the right hand side. And in terms of toilet facilities, there's a gents' toilet outside the room. Unfortunately, the ladies' toilet up here isn't working. And the only available toilet is downstairs in the basement. But there is a lift from outside and down to the basement. And to make it worse, of the two ladies' toilets in the basement, only one is actually working. So if you please try and go singly. Right, just to start off the meeting, as you know, this committee was elected following what was a rather contentious AGM last year. We had a difficult start to our term of office, insofar as we had difficulty actually getting any paperwork or anything from the previous committee. We eventually managed to get a copy of the register of members. Unfortunately, we were only provided with it in hard copy, and there were a number of errors on it. So it took quite a lot of work for us to put that in order and to be in a position to communicate with members. When we were in that position, we issued a newsletter to everybody, which I hope people found of some use. In terms of finances, again, it took us a number of months to actually access the bank account, and Nora and myself had to talk to the bank for quite a long period to actually get access to it. We have no financial records prior to when we took over. Equally, we have no secretarial records and we have no documentation whatsoever. So despite that, we continued on and we've tried to do it as much as we actually could have done. We think we've achieved quite a number of things during the course of the year, and we will go through these in the secretaries and registrars' reports. We had a commemorative event on Easter Saturday in the Garden of Remembrance, which was very well attended. It's online, the actual film of it. We had a prisoners' return event in June of this year. That was to commemorate the centenary of the prisoners coming back from British jails. We had the United Nations veterans participate in that, including their pipe band. So that was the first occasion since Easter 2016 that members, albeit former members, of the Irish Defence Forces actually paraded through the streets of Dublin. City Hall very nicely provided us with the City Hall for the event, and this was the first time in a decade that the City Hall has actually been opened on Sunday. Then in July we had a commemoration of the 90th anniversary of the death of Countess Markiewicz. That was held in Glasnevin Cemetery, and Sabina Higgins very kindly agreed to be the person to agree. And again, it was a very successful event, well attended. And finally, to commemorate the centenary of the death of Thomas Ashe, we had a collaborative event with the Lord Mayor of Dublin in City Hall. Again, it was a very, very well attended event. We were lucky with a company called Tile Media, which has produced a film, Fingal's Finest, and they allowed us to show that on the night. Again, we had United Nations veterans were present on the evening, and they provided a colour party escort for the Lord Mayor as he came in. We also had the biggest number of Ashe family members at any of the commemorative events that had taken place to commemorate Thomas Ashe. So we were delighted with that. We have taken an active role in relation to Moore Street. We, as some of you will know, the Minister has set up a consultative group, and phase 1 of that was completed during the course of this year. And a phase 2 group was set up, and we contacted the department and we thought that we would have a direct representative on that committee. So John Stevenson has been our representative on that committee. He has taken a very active role in it, and he has reported back regularly to the committee in terms of everything that has actually taken place at that meeting. The other thing we have done, albeit somewhat unsuccessfully, during our discussions on the various motions, is we've been in contact with the Glasnevin Trust. seeking a meeting with them in respect of the wall that I think almost everybody, certainly in this room, would object to. Unfortunately, they have just stonewalled us and continue to do so. We will continue to push this issue because we're not happy with it. As an organisation, we're not happy with it, and as an organisation, we're not going to put up with it, and we will continue to push for changes to that wall. As I say, this will become part of our discussion later. I don't know if anybody else heard it yesterday, but the doc on one yesterday was about the funeral and the burial of Frank Stagg, one of the hunger strikers who died, and there was issues around whether he was going to be allowed to be buried in the Republican plot in his League cemetery in Mayo. But today represents the 40th anniversary of the date on which he actually was interred in the Republican plot. And it reminds me sort of the fact that during the course of this year, we've actually lost a number of members, including Leo Johnson, Joe Kelly, Sean Holland, and probably others that I'm not aware of. So I just thought that, in thinking of those individuals, maybe we just give a minute's silence just to think of those people who have passed away in the last year. Mr. Cosgrave as well. Okay, thank you for that. Now, you don't want to hear me speak because we've got a lot on our agenda today. Before we get into the meeting proper, I just say, when individuals are talking, can we be courteous and polite to each other and with no rancor? We're not necessarily all going to agree on everything that's said here today, but I think we should at least treat each other with the courtesy it deserves. The first item on our agenda is to agree, and everybody should have a pack in front of them, to agree standing orders for the meeting. So you have them in front of you. I don't know whether we have everything correct in them, and we've done our best in terms of trying to put a proper format of how we conduct our meetings. So does anybody have any comment, or can I just put it to the floor? So can we take it that the standing order is accepted? If you give some a second. Donna, can you?
Sorry, I've been adopted now.
You're putting it to the floor. Okay. So I'll take they're adopted.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
We just, because they're adopted, on the vote standard, we would like to put in 2 emergency motions to the executive committee, which is allowable under number 6 of the standing order. Okay, and they can be spoken to by the proponents in here. I have them in here, I'll be in there, okay? So there's one of the motion. they're busy today. Yeah, they're under number 6.
Yeah, okay, no.
Read them out.
We,
You want me to read them out?
no, we'll deal with them when we come to the motions.
Okay.
No, I think you've got it.
I've also, and I've emailed it to Una.
Okay, so we'll take that emergency motion at the time as well.
Sorry, somebody wants to say something here.
No, you use the microphone, please. Because people are watching online, so they need the sound here.
Testing.
It's a very small, quick proposal that we're making. It relates to the order of the business. What we're suggesting is that the outstanding business from last year's meeting, that were a few motions which weren't discussed, that we clear those first and we get on to the AGM for this year.
No, we will deal with them the way we have to, which is under the motions. Okay, we're going to move forward, and we will start with the Secretary's report. So I'm going to hand you over to Noreen.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can everybody hear me? I'm going to be doing a bit of repeating, so forgive me for that. I'll start by saying that 2017 was a very busy year for the Executive Committee and for the Association. After the centenary commemorations and celebrations on the one hand, the difficulties of last year's AGM on the other, we felt it was essential for us to steady the ship, so to speak, and to put the agreed objectives in the Constitution into a plan of action that will provide a focus into the future for us. So by organising and raising funds for the 4 commemorations this year, that's Easter Saturday, the reenactment of the prisoner's return, the anniversary of Countess Margaret's funeral, and the funeral of Thomas Ashe. We have shown ourselves, thankfully, to be capable, all of us I mean, to be capable of continuing to keep the memory and legacy of our relatives to the forefront. I think we can all feel very proud about that. When I look back now, frankly, I'm quite amazed by what has been achieved, given what we inherited. I want to say that we spent the first 3 or 4 months since the last AGM in contact, or trying to get in contact with the previous incumbents on the executive to get the records of the association, such as minutes of meetings and correspondence. These are very important documentation that, as anybody who is involved in committees and other organisations will know well. We desperately needed access to the online membership database and access to the bank account and the financial records. While we did get access to the bank account in early June and we did get some financial records, there are no minutes of meetings or correspondence before the last AGM. We don't have them. Instead of handing over the password for the online membership database, a hard copy was provided, and Una will tell you about her exemplary work in that regard. I don't know how I think what she had to do was completely over and above the call of duty for a volunteer. I just want to say that because it's extraordinary, the amount of work. So the Executive Committee met 7 times last year, and subgroups were formed to undertake all the various activities I've described, and members of the EC represented the Association at various meetings. Some individual members of the Association joined with EC members to work on the various events, for which I would like to thank them now. At the same time, we had to put in a proper record, or system I should say, of record keeping, and we enhanced the new website. Well, it's in the process of being enhanced, and it will be launched over the next couple of weeks, and we'll let you all know when this happens. Looking back now, I really don't think that the level of activity this year can be sustained into the future, given that we are a volunteer organisation. Members, including the executive committee, we all have family responsibilities, as well as a lot of us having to earn our living. So time is a scarce commodity. So we all, I think, have to be realistic about what can be achieved, and the executive committee will have to prioritise its work based on feedback from the members. That's really important. We have more work to do, I think, in relation to how we work on policy. You know, we have to work in a more timely way and in a more effective way, so that we can communicate both to the state, the government, and other private organisations around issues that are concerned us. We have to do that in a better way, I think, going forward. And we also need to communicate better with our members. And of course, communication is a two-way process, so we want to hear from you as well. I would like to finish by thanking the Chair and the other members of the Executive Committee for their commitment and work on behalf of the Association last year. And I hope you feel you know more about the EC after this very short report. And I'd like to thank you for listening.
Thank you, Lauren. I'm now going to hand you over to Una, who fill you in on the series of questions.
Sorry for the second, but was it difficult to take over, or is there a reason why you didn't get minutes of last year's AGM?
There is no minutes of.
No minutes.
Nothing was handed over.
Okay, so my second question then is, with the new website, will there be a facility for the membership to access minutes of the executive committee meetings? Because that's pretty normal in a public, a public forum that people who are members can see what's going on at committee level, just 5 minutes, nothing else.
Well, the executive, we're happy to discuss that and take that on board and discuss with the new executive comes in. Now, I'm going to hand you over to Una.
Hi, I'll be doing a bit of repeating as well. So as Breen and Noreen already told us, we only got a hard copy of the database and we didn't get that until February. So what I had to do was I had to manually transfer all the data from the hard copy into digital format. There were just over 3,000 entries, and each entry would have about 5-6 items of information attached. So it took quite some time. So hence the delay in us communicating with you. I think it was April before we were able to send anything out. So that was the reason why that happened. The other thing I did as well was I slightly changed the format so that it would better reflect the actual numbers of members. Previously, what had happened was that you were entered for each relative you had. So for example, I was entered twice, once for my granddad and once for my granduncle. And what I did then, so the numbers didn't actually reflect the membership. So what I did was I would enter, say for example, myself once, my qualifying relative is my granddad, and then there's a column at the end for each additional relative who you have. So now when we look at the database, the number we see at the end of the database is reflecting the actual number of members that we have. So that was the second thing I did. And then the third thing was we had to set up the MailChimp account again and then set up the mailing list. And I know some people fell through slipped through the cracks, and I just want to apologise for I know Freddie here, a few people in my transfer, I must have made mistakes or slipped through the net, so apologies for that. And I hope that we fixed everything and that everybody who wants to be on is on. But I think in all this, I could not have done this without the help of Kieran Houlihan. He was amazing. He was just by my side giving me advice and support and technological help. He gave me a workshop on how to use MailChimp. So I just want to say thank you very much, Kieran, because the transition would have been much more difficult and taken much longer without his help. So now we have 2,352 members. We've only had 18 new members since I got the database in February, which is slightly disappointing. So what I would like to say to people, if you have family members or friends who are relatives and aren't registered with us, please encourage them to register, because it's important that we continue to grow. So on that note, I end my report. Thank you.
Thank you, and that is an important note. We do want to expand. We do want to be as relevant as possible, and to be as strong an organisation as possible when it comes to our dealings with the state. We'll now move on to our finance report for the year. And once again, I'm going to be handing you back to Noreen on that.
Thank you, Ian. That was sent out, I think you all have a copy in front of you, so I'll go through it quickly. In terms of what the bank balance, when we eventually got the bank account, we had €1,257.78. And we got a grant from the department of €3,196.37. And we got 3 grants from Dublin City Council, the full total of which is €6,035. And we got €305 in donations. So the total income we had for this year was €10,794.15. And then what was spent was, on the 4 commemorative events, €8,279.15 spent, and the public liability insurance was €451.66, and the bank charges and the chequebook was €101.50. I can't get over that. When I went through the account and realised it was €10 a month practically the bank is taking for us and putting our money into their business. We postage of €37, and that's important because it turns out we have 37 members who don't have access to email, and it's important that they're included. So it's quite an expensive business, as you know, because it's €1 per letter. But anyway, we sent out all the notices of the AGM, and we continue to stay in touch with them. And then stationery was €20. So the total is €9,079. The total amount spent is €9,079.31. And we have a surplus of €1,714.84. Now this meeting has to be paid for. We have a few bits and pieces to be paid for before the end of the year. It's an important, I want to make an important point about funding. We're completely reliant, really, on the goodwill of the department and indeed Dublin City. We were on Dublin City Council. Now we know that the money that Dublin City Council has, for instance, it won't have forever. Just happens to have it in relation to the decade of centenaries. So I think that's not a good place for the association to be in. I think we need to have some money of our own, however small it is. So there are no proposals, and I'm not going to make one either, about a membership fee. But I do think it's something we should look at in the future. Even if it's only a tenner a year or something small, so that we have some level of independence. I think really that's important. I just wanted to kind of say that as part of my financial report. Thank you.
Just in terms of that funding, so you're aware of it, the funding that has been provided by the department, what they do is they have agreed to underwrite the costs of us holding certain events. So, for example, the Garden of Remembrance, which cost whatever $1,000 it was, we have to pay that and then submit receipts to them for any expenditure that we incurred, and they pay that money back to us. Dublin City Council operates in a slightly different manner. We will come up with a proposal for an event, budget it, and that goes to the council, and if it's approved, they will provide that grant to us, usually in advance. But we are very, very grateful that both organisations, and in particular Dublin City Council, they have been very, very supportive of our events, and we're extremely grateful to Councillor Neil Ring for the support he has given us in that regard, and also to the Lord Mayor who has helped us out. Right, we move on to the election of officers. Now, the Constitution provides for 9 members of the Executive Committee, as it happens this time around, we actually only have 9 nominations for the post. They are various posts. They are myself, Noreen, Una, Jim Connolly Heron, Neil Ring, David Martin, Sean Egan, Donna Cooney and John Stevenson. So there won't be a formal vote by virtue of the fact that we only have 9 nominees for 9 places. But I would put it to the floor and ask people to at least show some support for the appointment of those 9 people. So if everybody's in favour of appointing the 9 concerned, will you please raise your hands? I think that's at least 50%, so we take that as passed. Thank you all. Right, we move on to motions. We have a couple of emergency motions in, which will be taken first. From the 4th Battalion, proposed by Owen Dooling and seconded by Pauline Clancy, that all motions not taken at the AGM 2016, which have carried over to today's AGM 2017, be dealt with first and conclude the unfinished business of AGM 2016. So Owen, would you like to say a few words to that? Donna, microphone.
It's working for me.
Hello? Just a very small piece of housekeeping. It's just to get the outstanding motions from last year out of the year, out of the way first, to the top of the queue, then on then with the business of the meeting. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, I mean straight up, look, I have a difficulty with this, right? And the reason I have a difficulty with this is we have quite a number of motions that are down. I can't automatically tell which ones are from last year, which ones are this year. I know in terms of the ones I have put in. I've no doubt the 4th can tell me which ones they put in last year that they're repeating here. But the difficulty with doing it that way is if we take last year's motions and discuss them solely, and particularly in the context of what your second motion is, which is to the effect that we actually defer entirely consideration of a new constitution until later in the year and have a second SGM to consider it. I personally think we are better dealing with all the motions that have been put in by everybody. If we end up discussing and say the second motion isn't carried, if we end up discussing the 2016 motions, what we'll end up doing is discussing changing the existing constitution, which the Executive Committee strongly consider is totally and utterly unworkable, is actually nonsensical in places. So we will end up changing it, only to come back and consider introducing a new constitution entirely, which undoubtedly will require these motions that are down to change the existing constitution will be put forward in the context of the proposed new constitution. So I think we are better in terms of considering a new constitution with these motions in terms of making changes to the new proposed constitution, which everybody has had for a period now and has had the opportunity to consider.
Can I say something on that? Because I seconded the motion there. With respect, Chair, you have had communication from me for me to say I am on the executive, that I have difficulty. I feel we're putting the cart before the horse. But I do believe we do need to deal with the unfinished business of last year. My recollection was that we said we'd have a special general meeting to bring in the motions that weren't passed. I raised that at the executive meeting, and you said you couldn't get all the motions from last year because of the secretary. But nonetheless, we're still able to come up with them here today. And I do believe that we're putting the cart before the horse, and that in the interest of the democracy, a continuation of hearing the voice of the people. We can't presume that the new constitution is going to be adopted. We need to start with the one that we have now and look to that, and then down the line go to a draft constitution and maybe integrate what is voted on from the current constitution into the draft constitution, hence another meeting. So I believe we are putting the cart before the horse, and I've said it, and I'm on the executive, and I need to say that here now, and I'm doing it as representing also as convener of the 4th Battalion.
Sorry, I just want to speak as a member. I'm not speaking as a secretary. I just want to speak as an ordinary member. First of all, normally amendments are taken before you take the substantive motion. And that's, I think, what you're trying to do here now, and I understand that. But I feel that if we go the way you're suggesting, which is that all the motions that you have, and it's a difficulty for me in the sense that this is a membership organisation, it's based on members. There's nothing in either the current constitution or the new draft one about the role of garrisons in policy making. So all of us are here as individual members in terms of voting. If we accept the emergency motion and we put all these changes to the existing constitution, then we have a situation where there'll be more motions coming forward for the existing constitution because of the fact that it's absolutely not fit for purpose in any way, shape or form. If you read it, the executive committee has so much power, the membership authority has hardly any power. So it really would mean, I think, that you would have to have a meeting, like you're saying, and you would have a meeting entirely about the constitution.
That's what we're saying.
Yes, I know, I'm hearing that, I hear you. But the difficulty with that is, so only some people would attend a meeting about constitutions. It's not the kind of thing that everybody enjoys doing or kind of gets, really. And so what you'll have is, you'll have a smaller number of people attending a special, this is my view, as somebody who's, I'm a member of the association. You'll have a smaller number of people attending, and they will vote on the constitution for everybody, which isn't as democratic as everybody here today at the AGM voting. An alternative approach to what you're suggesting, if I could do that, is that the executive who is bringing forward this new constitution could accept some of the motions into the new constitution rather than going back into the old constitution, because we're going back and then we have to go back further to put in more things to make that old constitution into some kind of a decent working document where the power is shared rather than what's in that document. That's my opinion. Thank you.
The other issue is, first of all, there's a motion down to change the constitution. So that will,
Existing constitution.
yes, to introduce effectively the new constitution, which people have been circulated with. It was mentioned that the executive committee is made up of ordinary people who have other jobs and tasks and roles, and we've had to look at what we're capable of achieving. And we did as much as we could in terms of last year, in terms of actually holding events for members. So if we go down the road of deferring this constitution, looking at things, and don't forget, in doing so, these other proposed motions can be looked at in the context of any new constitution, and necessary changes made. And it saves having to have a further special general meeting of everybody to discuss changing the constitution, which the executive committee are firmly of the view is unworkable. So what we're going to be doing is changing the constitution as it stands to a new constitution, which will contain these amendments if they're all voted on, but will still be unworkable in terms of the overall content of the constitution. And it seems to me on a practical basis, it makes much more sense to actually look at implementing proposed changes to a new constitution, which provides power back to the membership, rather than putting everything in the hands of the executive committee, which is the difficulty we've had in terms of the events of the previous 2 years. So that's just my view on it. I think we're putting ourselves to unnecessary trouble, and this can all be dealt with today.
My name is Kate Hayes from the 4th Battalion Group. I just have a problem with using the term constitution and all these rules and regulations. I have been always under the impression that we're all volunteers here to commemorate, respect and honour those who fought and died in 1916 and the ensuing couple of years. I think it sounds like we're running the United Nations or something when we get into such legally little point about who can do this and who can do that. In a few years' time, we'll be very glad for the next generation of people will be volunteer to do what you're doing. And thank you very much for all you're doing and all everybody else is doing. At a first glance of the new constitution, one little piece jumped out of it. And it says you'll be obliged to ask permission to do things, for instance, in the 4th Battalion. So does that mean we would have had to come to you and ask, can we go finding the plaques, for instance, commemorative plaques around their Italian area? Or that we went to James Hospital, which we met with some of the executives, to make sure that when the new hospital was built, to every fragment and memory of what happened there in 1916 would be eliminated. And to see if they could possibly have some commemorative memorabilia or plaques or something in the grounds to show what happened there in the past. Look, it just sounds to me like it's too much us and them, where we should all get together on this. That's really what I want to say.
Okay, occasionally.
And I really, really hope today doesn't end up like the last day. I found it the most awful day. And a lot of people here know I've been involved in a lot of organisations in my life, and that was certainly the worst one. Thank you for what you said.
Listen, absolutely, I agree with you. What happened last year was absolutely horrendous, and no, we certainly will not be ending up like that today. As I say, we may have different views on things, but I don't think any of us are going to be falling out over it. We all have ultimately the same aim. You made a number of points there, just in relation to rules, regulations, having a constitution, etc. I mean, a bit like the United Nations. Look, it's not unusual for organisations to have a constitution to actually give a direction to the organisation, and we do need rules and standing orders for how we conduct our business. And in part, that's to prevent what happened last year, because there was actually absolutely no rules and regulations in place. In terms of the point you made, in terms of seeking permission, that is a provision of the new constitution, and if we get round to discussing the new constitution, obviously every provision in that is up for discussion and amendment. What that has to do with is nothing to do with the fact that it prevents garrisons or individual groups or anything else going off and pursuing their own activities. What that is about is where they are doing something in particular which is relevant to the business and promotion of the association, the broader body, that there should be some liaison with us, and that's to prevent a disunity happening. So, for example, if one garrison wanted to go off and do something that had, within the association, been something that wasn't agreed by the overall association, and that could be something where we have passed a motion at an AGM or whatever else, and a garrison may decide, well, look, we don't agree with that policy, we're going to go and do our own thing. Garrisons are entitled to do their own thing, but perhaps in those circumstances they're not entitled to it using the overall organisation name. And so that was just that was the intent of that. But whether it achieves it, of course, it's a separate matter entirely. And as I say, anything that's in the new constitution is totally changeable by the members. All we can do is put a draft before people. Maureen did mention that she felt it was putting the cart before the horse, and this is a point she certainly raised at executive committee meetings. Overall, the executive committee decided that they felt it was best to put a new constitution to the members, which is the reason that it's here today. So, you know, that's the position we find ourselves in. And we're going to have to find a way out of it between everybody here today and the committee. So look, we're in the position where the proposal is essential. And I think to discuss this properly, we need to make reference to the fact that there is a second emergency proposal, which which will effectively defer discussing the new constitution entirely, and that we have to go back to it now, obviously early next year. As I say, my own particular view of it is, you know, it's creating additional work because we're going to change something that we know we're going to change again. And I don't see any particular merit in that. I don't think it's necessarily useful. There's somebody else in the room.
Sorry. Well done, Doug. Sorry, I don't have any. I don't know the people who are on the different sides of the debate here, so I'm neutral in that sense. And I didn't understand the issue of Rihalu last year, and I don't understand it this year. But it does seem to make sense to me that if we're discussing amendments to a constitution, and every organisation needs a basic constitution, that we should know and be absolutely clear which constitution we're amending. And it would seem to me to make sense to discuss the constitution that's being proposed. And if we agree it, but then we're making amendments to that, and if we disagree it, but then we're making amendments to the over. But to make amendments without knowing what you're making amendments to, then, you know, who decides how that amendment applies to a document? So it would seem to me that if the first motion is defeated of the new constitution, but then we could revisit the idea of reordering motions. But if the first motion is passed, well then it's moot. We just carry on.
Yeah, I mean, look, essentially what you're saying is correct. We're discussing two approaches. One is we adopt a new constitution and amend it appropriately, or we don't deal with the new constitution, we operate under the existing constitution and amend it.
Which is what
as
we're
I say,
operating on now, Brian. We're actually operating now with Secretary of Economy.
yes, we're operating under the old constitution, yeah.
And we have amendments to that constitution which weren't taken last year, and I'm reiterating what I said here, and surely that should be done first. And then integrated into any new draft constitution.
Yeah,
I have from the beginning a difficulty with the way that this is all happening with the second hand. I don't have the same problem you have with this. I felt we were operating all right under the old constitution. The corporate tax was done very well under the old one. So I don't have the same difficulties that you have. I appreciate that the overall executive voted for this draft. I don't have the same position vis-a-vis. It hasn't impacted on us in that sense, you know. The 4th Battalion has been quite happy doing its business.
absolutely, but the 4th Battalion isn't operating under the constitution of the association. The 4th Battalion operates entirely separately, same as that each garrison operates entirely separately. We're talking about the constitution of the association. And
it's going to affect us all.
Absolutely, but the point is, the constitution that exists is what led to the chaos and the problems that we encountered at last year's AGM, and indeed coming up to that. As it stands, for example, under the existing constitution, we could have delayed holding any AGM until later in the year, right? And it gives that control entirely to the executive committee. It allows the executive committee to manipulate certain things. So we wanted to avoid that. And I agree, you put in motions last year in respect of the constitution that was there, right? And that was the obvious thing that was going to happen. The situation has changed somewhat insofar as the executive committee, having gone through the old constitution in detail, felt it was entirely unworkable, it wasn't suitable for this organisation at all, and as a result, a new draft constitution was drawn up by the committee, and the committee, as a body, is putting that forward to the AGM and asking people to accept on it. Now, I think ultimately we're going to have to. There's a point of order from Neil.
Neil Rain. I would put it to the floor that one, we have to move on with this. We can't be going back to last year. This is the 1917 AGM, with all due respect, Paul again. And I do respect there were outstanding motions. I was at the AGM. I have no idea what they were. if you read standing order number 6, I'm putting it to the floor that we rule both of those emergency motions out of order under standing order number 6. On the basis, 1, it's up to the executive committee to decide if they're in order or not. And 2, an emergency motion can only deal with important and urgent matters that have arisen since the closing date for acceptance of motions. Now, those motions and those emergency motions could have been put in under normal motions in the floor here today, not brought up as an emergency motion a year later. They haven't arisen since the publication of the AGM notice. They arose last year, those motions brought in, and you know that. They've been there the whole time, but you could have put them on the agenda for today. They don't arise. Well then, if they're on the agenda, what is the issue? We have an agenda. Those emergency motions are out of order. They're purely and simply out of order, in my view. And I've been on so many committees in Dublin City Council, etc., etc. I believe it's under Standing Order 6. The Executive Committee alone can decide that they should be put to the floor. And even at that, I believe they're out of order under Standing Order number 6. So I just want to move on, get this association up and running. We had all this last year. We don't want it this year. We'll move on. If people have other agendas, that's fair enough. My agenda is 1916. Make sure that both the government, Dublin City Council and all of us continue to honour the memory of the men and women of 1916. Not decide whether an emergency motion is an emergency or not.
Just on another point of order, actually, these are procedural issues and they should have been taken under standing orders, which we didn't, so we do need to move on now, definitely.
Okay, well, look. We have a difficulty. I don't agree creating any contentious situation. Everybody has come here in good faith to put their motions forward. This emergency motion has been put in. There are grounds where we can rule it out. I think the fairest way for everybody is for a show of hands and a vote on whether it should be ruled out of order or whether we should continue the discussion. So I'm asking people to vote on that.
In the interest of
That's the
That's
one about
the second motion.
Special EGM.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm not happy, but I'm prepared. But I don't know what was deficient in the first constitution, for instance. So I have concerns about that. But I'm in the interest of getting on with business. I will withdraw.
Well, thank you very much, Kate. Okay, that leaves us with the first emergency motion. So can I ask for a show of hands those opposed to it? Okay, those in favour of it? Okay, well I think that's an overwhelming majority who are opposed to it. Right, so we can now move on to the other motions. There's one other emergency motion. Donna's one. Okay, an emergency motion has been proposed by Donna Cooney and seconded by Councillor Neil Ring. The motion reads that the 1916 Relatives Association requests that the new children's hospital should be named after Dr. Kathleen Lynn rather than the name currently being put forward, i.e. the Phoenix Children's Hospital. A choice of name that has been widely criticised and derided. This association further asks those involved in the decision-making process to review their inappropriate and unimaginative decision and seize this once-off opportunity to name the hospital after Dr. Kathleen Lynn, a true Republican who worked with the poor of the North Inner City, set up food and soup kitchens in Liberty Hall during the 1913 lockout, was Chief Medical Officer for the ICA during the 1916 Rising, and subsequently set up St. Ultan's Children's Hospital. So Donna, do you want to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I think it says it in the words of the motion, but on a personal level, She also instructed and encouraged a lot of the Cumann Amon and the women of 1916 to take up the medical profession. This is Farah was not in fact a nurse. She had first aid training, as a lot of them did, by Dr. Kathleen, who trained a lot of the women in first aid, but she encouraged her to go and do her midwifery, as she did a lot of the women, including my great-grandmother as well. And it meant that the infant mortality at the time was so high that really what she's done for generations now of Irish children and children born in this country, she deserves to be, and it's a once-off opportunity. And Councillor Nyring will be proposing this as an emergency motion to Dublin City Council meeting tomorrow night. And I think, the success of him getting that through the thing will fact that we've got the weight of the 1960 Relatives Association supporting that, I think will lend or help him in getting that motion passed tomorrow.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Donna. Can we have a show of hands, those in favour? Okay, that motion is passed, thank you. Right, now we go on to the list of motions. Everybody has them in the pack they got on arrival. The first proposal is, having reviewed the existing constitution, the Executive Committee believes it is inadequate in its main purpose, which is to provide a framework for all aspects of the governance of the association. We are therefore proposing the adoption of a new constitution which will offer clarity regarding the objectives of the association, the role of members, the powers and responsibilities of the Executive Committee, and all aspects of decision making. That has been put forward by the Executive Committee, and Noreen Byrne is the main proposer, and seconded by William McNulty. Now, as I've said, and it's fairly clear from everything that's been said, I obviously support this motion as Chairman of the Executive.
I'd like to speak on behalf of this motion. I'm recommending the adoption of it. Even though we're an organisation that's unincorporated in that we're not legally incorporated, we still have a duty and a responsibility to have a set of rules to govern how a set of rules which govern how we run our business, so to speak. So, in reviewing the current constitution, it became very clear that the extent of additions needed to meet the customary standard of governance would have meant that the AGM would need a whole day or more to consider them. There would be so many additions required. Just to give you some examples, in the current constitution, the role of members in the work of the association is almost invisible. The section on communication, these are just a few little examples. The section on communication excludes members who do not use email. And the Executive Committee has a whole lot of decision-making powers without reference to the members. Finally, in the sections on, and I'm quoting, it's not language I would use, discipline and appeals, there is no provision for independent oversight of any decisions the EC might make in this regard. In other words, if they felt a member did something wrong, they have all the exclusive powers in the current constitution. There's no independent oversight whatsoever. So you can see clearly that the kind of balance is wrong there in terms of the members and the executive. And nowadays, as far as I'm concerned, it's accepted practice that in any kind of a dispute, if you can't resolve it, that you have some kind, at the first step anyway, you have some kind of an independent person looking at it at the next level. So we felt that the best way to proceed was to prepare a new draft constitution which would be considered by members and amended by them if they so wish, and then to present it at the AGM today. So on behalf of the Executive Committee, I commend the adoption of a new, more comprehensive constitution which provides clarity regarding the objectives of the association, the role of members, the powers and responsibilities of the EC, and all aspects of decision making in the association. And I just want to say one final thing. It's not making a meal out of it, it's just providing a set of rules that is for this type of organisation. And in writing it, I used, I'm the one who prepared the draft of the executive, I used the guidelines on the Charity Regulators website about unincorporated bodies. So what's in it hasn't come from
sky or nowhere. So it has, you know, it has the kind of guidance of the Charities Association. So I commend this to you. Thank you.
Okay, there's a comment, Donna, from the floor. Donna?
Can everybody hear me? I would just like on a point of clarification in respect of clause 5, which deals with the executive committee and the composition of say, right, the draft constitution as presented to us now states that it shall comprise of no less than 5 and no more than 9 members. But when we look down at the quorum that the executive committee is proposing, it's 50% plus 1. So at the very minimum, 3 members of the executive committee can actually determine the policy and the business of the committee, and at the very maximum, five members can do so. Is this equitable? And because I cannot see any reference that any one of those 3 or maximum of 5 is actually composed of a member of the officer board itself, and perhaps you'd be able to give us some information on that, please.
Okay, I'll speak directly to that. What you have is an executive committee. All the Constitution is proposing is that there has to be a minimum of 5 people to form an executive committee and a maximum of 9. The reason we have a maximum of 9 is because if you go any bigger than that, it becomes quite unwieldy in terms of operating procedure. For example, we only had 9 nominees this time around. Will we have 9 next year? Will we have less? So we wanted to provide some room that there could be less, because in due course we may find that there's less people standing for the executive committee. But we felt that a minimum number for any effective committee had to be 5 people. So that's where those 2 figures came from. And obviously, in terms of setting a quorum for any meeting, we wanted to make sure it was 50% plus 1. So yes, depending on the size of the executive committee in any particular given year, that quorum may change. And hopefully it will always be an executive committee of 9 people, but we can't guarantee it, and that's the reason that those 2 figures are in there. It doesn't mean that if there's 9 people on the committee and only 5 turn up, that the quorum is half of the 5 plus 1. The quorum will always be half of the overall number of the executive committee plus 1. Okay.
It just seems to be a little gap. I mean, today I came in. I don't want to be nitpicking through the whole thing. Today I came in and I hear there's 9 places and there's 9 nominees. I was never asked would I like to nominate somebody. I don't know if anybody else was. It was almost a fait accompli. No, it would have been nice to know.
Well, no, Kate, look, actually that's incorrect. We sent out a notice to everybody well in advance where we provided the date for nominations to be submitted and how that was to be done. We provide.
Sorry, then that's my fault. Sorry.
I mean, in fairness, the committee has tried to do everything above board to be open and to be responsive and to members, which is, you know, one of the reasons we're actually trying to change the Constitution so that it isn't an organisation run by the executive committee, it's an organisation run by the membership. Michael wishes to speak.
Right. I think that the part of the Constitution which deals with the garrisons conflicts with what you say about the members dealing with that the association follows the members rather than the association following the committee. And I agree with the point that was made earlier about the obligations that are put by the committee and by the Constitution, the proposed Constitution, on the garrisons. It's far too restricted altogether. And it attempts it's an attempt by the committee to control the garrisons, and that's not our. I would also like if you were going to accept the new constitution as it is now, or we're going to accept the new constitution now at this particular meeting, can you say to what extent the motions that are also there for the amendment of the constitution are included in the new constitution? Do you understand what I mean? The various objectives.
Okay. Just to avoid any confusion on that, if we accept this new constitution, right, any motions thereafter in respect of the constitution will apply to this new constitution. So if people pass them, they will change this proposed new constitution, which we're going to be voting on.
So the other motions, if they are passed today, will amend the new constitution. Okay, that's fine.
That's the clarity that I needed, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Is that okay? I think that the control which the committee is trying to wield on the garrisons is far too broad and far too restrictive altogether.
Michael, could I clarify that? Those two lines come from our experience where it's communications issue. It's not about control. It's where several times this year, twice or three times I think, we had a situation where events the executive was organising, or nationally so to speak, clashed with stuff happening in the garrisons. So all we're saying is that just tell us what you're doing, really.
No,
it's not about obliged to
inform.
inform, yeah, to let us know what's happening.
It's not the same.
So if you don't like the word obliged, or if it's badly written, let me put it to you like that, why doesn't somebody come up with an amendment here and now to make it more suitable? But I'm trying to say to you that the purpose wasn't to control, it was about communicating what's happening so that we wouldn't face what we faced last year where we were organising things and then we felt garrisons were doing things. That would mean that there'd be nobody at the events, you know, that's all it was.
Okay. Mel is going to comment, and just before we get to Mel's comment, look, any wording that's used in this, there may well, as Kate says, it's an unfortunate term of phrase, right? This, what we're putting it before you, this will ultimately be the members' constitution. So anything and everything in this is open to change. The members can change anything they want in it. And that is the purpose of having a constitution, the purpose of having an AGM, and the purpose of having motions to allow members to change the constitution. Now, if you'd like to.
Thanks very much. Mel Mockable. I'd like to suggest a change just in relation to number 4, general meetings. Item H there says the agenda of the annual general meeting shall include the following, and it gives a list of a number of points. There are 5 points. I'd like to see the minutes of the previous meeting of the AGM, the general meeting, and specifically the AGM included on that as an agenda item, a standing agenda item. And that would be normal and acceptable, and just so that there's no further confusion as we've already had today.
Well, look, I don't think anybody has a problem with that, and we're perfectly happy to take that on board, so I won't even ask for a vote on it, we'll just accept that. No, absolutely, it would be, but it does no harm to actually have it down in writing as something that has to be on the agenda.
Can you accept the other, the previous point also? But with the publications.
Well, whoever is making the proposal to change it.
Number 6. E, so 6 garrison groups, item E, I think that comes.
Okay, if I change that word, that sentence there, E, all garrison groups are obliged to form garrison liaison, etc. If we just change that to are encouraged to, so there's no obligation whatsoever.
The other thing is,
Sorry, Paul Callers.
Sorry, through the chair. Would there be a point of inviting a member from each garrison to sit on the committee as well?
I think that probably would be beneficial, but the difficulty...
It just means to say that that member can go back to his garrison and let them know what's happening around, and vice versa.
We did discuss that, right? And the conclusion we reached was, yes, there has to be liaison with the garrisons, right? Not every garrison actually has a garrison leader, right? Which is a difficulty we have. But if we automatically included a member of each garrison, you're now talking about 9 people plus another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. So you now have a committee of 16.
But they wouldn't be on the committee, Chair. They'd be just there as a non-officer. You wouldn't have a vote on the committee.
Yeah, but I think the way we felt that might be best handled is that we would actually have liaison officers, and somebody would have to liaise with the garrisons to keep them appraised of everything that the executive is doing, and we would also then have to have meetings with the garrison groups themselves, so that again there was a clarity of communication between.
Because what I'm getting from the result is not a lot of people are worrying that you're going to be left out in the cold.
No, I don't think anybody's going to be left out in the cold whatsoever, and that really would not be our intention. The whole intention of this is actually to rope the garrisons into the association and to create a closer relationship between them all. There's somebody else down the end. Donna is.
Claire.
Claire.
Donna, Claire. Can you hear me, Chair? Can you hear me properly?
Please use microphones.
We need it for the broadcast.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just again on the point of clarification, could you at this stage explain how the garrison liaison officer will be appointed? Will it be a member of the incoming executive, or will you be inviting individual garrisons to nominate someone to act as garrison liaison?
No, the garrison liaison officer would be a member of the executive who would have a specific role to actually liaise with the garrisons.
Thank you very much.
Okay, look, there's potentially loads of changes to this constitution, and we know we're coming up with other ones here now. What I would propose to do. Okay.
Could I suggest that each garrison be asked to give a short report of what their plans are for the next 3 months to each meeting of the executive? Then it would be quite clear what's happened. And that word there, all garrison groups are obliged. That could be for ease of administration, all garrison groups should inform.
Well, again, look, there's a difficulty over wording here, and I think it has generally been agreed in the room that are encouraged, so there's no obligation, and so it isn't seen that the executive is trying to control garrisons. So I'm perfectly happy to leave it as being are encouraged, if that is agreed with most people. I think generally it is. So what I propose to do is, let's put this constitution to the floor.
There's one more.
And there's one more.
One more thing on the garrison groups. Jared will again and Doug. I'm aware that there aren't maybe organised groups for all of the garrisons, and I'm just wondering if we could somehow phrase this to invite and encourage the formation of other groups such as Galway and Scorty and, dare I say it, Fingal, Ashburn, where my people were, where many of them, but they were there, and good nows. So somehow we could make it clear that this is not a closed list, is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely, have you a proposal in that regard?
Oh, that's the right way to send the work back. Maybe just an EH, EF, and that the executive committee would encourage other garrison groups to organise or whatever. The formation of other garrison groups.
Support and encourage.
So, excellent, support and encourage, that's exactly what we need.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we're happy to take that change on board. Right, look. No, look, it's important to get these things out of the way. Everybody needs to be able to speak.
One more point of clarification under complaints and appeals. C, is the chairperson of the association shall appoint an independent, competent person to hear the appeal, and the decision of this person shall be final. Now, meaning no disrespect to any chairperson at present or in the future, that person can then appoint who he or she likes as the competent, independent person. And I really wouldn't go along with one person deciding one other person can hear an appeal. I think that should be 3 people in natural justice.
So we suggested an amendment then to put an appeals committee shall be formed.
3 people minimum. One person appointing one person to hear an appeal of one person. That's not natural justice.
Okay, so Kate, can you help us with this? Are you saying the chairperson of the shall appoint him? So would the executive committee, would that work there?
I think it should be more than one independent company.
Okay.
I think you 3. That's my suggestion.
That 3 independent people.
Yeah. 3 people who work.
Okay, just.
That's two members of the association and one independent person.
Anything like that, but not one.
Okay, look, the intent of that, the use of the word independent was actually that somebody from outside the organisation, and that was the independent. But look, I have no difficulty whether we have it as 2 members of the association and an independent person. Right? I'm perfectly happy to change that, absolutely. So, can I put it to the floor that we adopt this constitution, and then we continue on with the other motions to effectively further amend this constitution? So all in favour, please raise your cards. Those against? Okay, carried. Thank you. Yeah, we try and get through these as quick as we can, and if possible, it would be nice if we could all go for a drink or a cup of tea in the bar afterwards and have a social element as well. Right, the second amendment is proposed by Sean Tapley. Oh, by the way, I should say that there are actually a couple of mistakes in the document you have, and I'll just point them out to you. Motion number 14, what's down on the page is that it was proposed by Jim Hearn. That, of course, should be James Connolly Hearn. And motion number 16 got confused with number 17 in terms of the proposers. It's down as Pierce Bruton and seconded by David Camp. That should actually be Owen O'Donoghue and O'Shaughnessy. Eileen, sorry. Now, I apologise for that. That's an error on my part. So I hope you'll forgive me, and we'll correct it here now. Okay, just on to amendment number 2. That the Constitution of the 1916 Relatives Association be amended to include a formula of wording in the aims and objectives of the association that reflects more clearly our desires to protect the honour of our relatives, such as to uphold the honour of our relatives, the men and women who participated in the fight for Irish freedom in the 1916 Rising, and to defend their legacy where and whenever necessary. So, Sean, if you're in the room with us. Donna will come to you. Unfortunately, we do need the microphone because we have a number of people who are watching this from around the world online, and sound-wise, we need the microphones.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sean Tapley, and I'm here to propose a motion that I hope you'll support. I'm sure many of you have been upset, annoyed, and angered at something that's been written or said about one of your relatives, the 1916 relatives, particularly when it's offensive to their good name and character to your dear relative, and when you know it's not to be true, and maybe to be a complete pack of lies. Well, I certainly have, I can tell you. Our relatives and their legacy is continuously under attack. And when that happens to you, it's very frustrating. And it would be nice to know that we have some organisation and some support at our back. Someone who you could turn to if you decide to challenge that hurtful comment or offensive comment. And I think the 1916 Relatives Association is ideally positioned to provide that support to its members. I suppose the emergency proposal for Dr. Lynn, naming the hospital after her, is also fits into this proposal. So whereas I know that the Constitution and the aims and the objectives implicitly imply that the organisation is there to support and uphold the honour of people, but it doesn't explicitly state it. So I would like, among the aims and objectives, that the following wording would be inserted. And the wording is, to uphold the honour of our relatives, the men and women who participated in the fight for Irish freedom in 1916 Easter Rising, and to defend their legacy where and whenever necessary. Thank you. I hope you give me your support.
Thank you, Sean. Does anybody from the floor wish to comment on Sean's? Okay. Will you vote on it, please? If you're in favour, raise your hand. And those opposed? Okay, motion passed. Well done, Sean. Okay, motion 3. It's proposed by Padraig and Tansig and seconded by David Cannon. In the spirit of the volunteer men and women of 1916, this meeting includes in the Constitution, as an objective of the Association, to promote the use of the Irish language and a functioning bilingualism, Irish and English, in the affairs of the Commonwealth of 1916. So, Padraig, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Chair. Well, we have been trying our best to bring bilingualism in some of our messages, but just to continue that, and in the spirit of our ancestors who were, founders of Conradh na Gaeilge and were committed to the language. It is a national language, and there is a bilingual policy, even though it isn't always manifest throughout the country. And just to actually encourage it, that we've included in our objectives as a cultural objective. I know we're not all lucky enough to be native speakers. I'm lucky to be bilingual, but it would be encouraging it in a positive way, not a way that's arduous to us, but to have it in there in the aims and objectives of the association. I know Cathal Brew, who's also a native speaker, is also a seconder of this, although his name isn't on it because you can only have one name. But David Cant also felt, and he's not here today, and somebody else might want to second that in their absence for me. But yeah, I think that it's very important that we do acknowledge the language. I think it's fighting a battle. I'm living a lot of the time on the Aran Islands, and I'm in I work in Aran 8 to 9 months of the year, and I'm in a native speaking community. And there's a massive challenge at the moment. We reckon that in 20 years there won't be native speakers among the young people in the Gaeltacht. That's what we're looking at. So I think we need to be conscious of that and to try in some way just be aware of the precious treasure that our language is, which Piers and Connolly and everyone recognised. Eamon Cant in particular, I say it, as a member of the South Dublin Union, Maribone Group.
Okay, thank you, Padraig. Who would like to speak on this motion?
Kate Hayes. I suppose I have two concerns about this. Again, what we've said a few times today, that we are all volunteers and we have a limited time. My first concern is if we broaden the scope of the aims and objectives of the association to include the Irish language, the promotion of the Irish language, I think what then we're setting a precedent where other people can come in and say, we want now to support women's rights, we want to support children's homelessness, and all those are really worthy objectives. But we have to be really careful about keeping our focus, which is the men and women of 1916. We can't spread ourselves too thinly, because then we cease to become effective. So in terms of taking it on as an objective, while it's a very worthy objective, I do think it's beyond the scope of the association, and that it would open the door for other issues to be brought in. And then secondly, in terms of it, the association becoming bilingual, which again, ideally it would be wonderful, but I suppose in practical terms, what I would say is that if every message that went out and every email that was sent had to be translated into Irish, what would happen is we would become a very slow and unresponsive association. It's really important, and we've all tried this on the committee. One of our main aims was to respond promptly to members' queries, to their emails. When members wanted notices sent out about their books or other events that were of interest, that we respond promptly. And Padraig, you've been great in this. Padraig has given great support in that. we now try to include 2 lines of Irish in the notices that go out, but even that can prove difficult because it means that somebody has to be available to do that translation, and sometimes because even for those 2 lines the availability wasn't there, it had to go out without the translation. So I would say my 2 objections are we need to keep our focus on the 1916 rising and the legacy, and 2, we need to be a responsive and functioning association that responds to our members and communicates promptly.
Sorry, Brona Eloy. I'm saddened to hear that actually. Una, as an Irish speaker myself, what's wrong with putting Irish in? You're just throwing it to one side. My granda spoke Irish, Harry spoke Irish, Ned spoke Irish, Kathleen spoke Irish, all of them in 1916. And I think by saying, oh, we can't put anything in Irish, can you not just put a bit of Irish in? It's not the end of the week. No, I just think Padraig's suggestion is great. Because I speak Irish, my kids speak Irish, my grandkids hopefully will speak Irish, and I'm saddened to hear you just wouldn't put any Irish into anything unless Padraig and have it to be there.
Brona, in fairness, that wasn't what Una said, in actual fact. She certainly did not say Irish would not be used.
Can I clarify that, Rona? I said to continue what we're doing, that we use a couple of lines of Irish, that we top and tail, so our greeting is in Irish, and our sign-off is in Irish, and where possible, where there is availability for translation, we put in the 2 lines, as we have been doing. And if somebody emails us in Irish, we respond in Irish. If someone emails us in English, we respond in English. So, I didn't mean that at all. I just said, I suppose what I'm thinking of, let's keep it practical so that we keep the communication flowing.
Hello, me again. Just like speaking to support of the motion there, I don't think there's anything in this motion that is going to mandate the committee to have to, do everything through Irish or anything at all. But it is a fact that the language was a huge motivator for our ancestors. My grandparents, when one set of them met at the Gaelic League, I wouldn't be here at all if it wasn't for the Gaelic League. And that's the case with many of us. All we're saying really is to continue what's going, and it's a bit like the previous motion about it was always implicit that we would defend the honour of our ancestors. It was always implicit, we read the name of the association and so on. I mean, I didn't read the old constitution, but I always assumed it was implicit that we were defending what they were defending. And I think it's a simple statement that we would support language. It would leave us in a position, for example, that we would be able to make a statement if there was a terrible attack on the language. I don't think it's mandating any extra work for anyone. But I would like to suggest that, for example, if the committee would like, I'd certainly volunteer, and I'm sure Padraig and many others will, that you can put us all on a quick email, and if there's a couple of lines need translated, I'll certainly volunteer, and I'm sure the other speakers will volunteer to turn it around in 24 hours.
Well, that's a great offer, thanks very much. Look, Padraig would like to say.
Can I also speak in support of the motion? I don't think that it opens us up to all things, because I think this is inherent in the aims and objective of the 1916 relatives in terms of honouring our relatives, because they themselves learned to speak. Elizabeth Brown learned to speak in Irish. She wasn't a fluent native speaker, but she learned in England and as did a lot of them learned to speak the Irish language, and I think it's honouring them to use the Irish language in as much as practical. I can't myself, I'm not a native speaker, but I try to speak as much as I can, and when we had our events in the GPO garrison, we had enough people who were fluent that were able to do that, and we were able to translate and have our programme in both. So I think there's enough people in this room, show of hands, for those that would be able and competent. I think we've got Owen there, Brona, Mel, Niall, we've got quite a lot, so I think we'd be able to, that's my mind.
Just to say that the idea that I had was to actually hold what we have, to keep that working. Because even to get what we have, I actually had to do a little bit of work to get to that stage. And this is about consciousness and awareness more than anything else. When we're living in a fully English-speaking community all the time, you don't often get it. There are people who do everything in Irish. I'm involved with the Cup Paper Visit, and I'm having a struggle to get masses in Irish, because a lot of the people I'm dealing with are praying in English.
There were people who pray in Irish, for example, that's a sideline. But, you know, so I do think that people like Brona especially, anybody who's a native speaker needs to be answered in Irish. It's not rocket science, we can do that. We have enough resource people, and we can have more than just myself, we can have a whole group of us, and it'll be turned around. So you'll get the support, you know, the next committee, and that's the most important thing. And also, if we're going out to TG Cahir and all these places, we actually need to be, it's very good to be able to say to the media that that's part of our aims and aspirations, to be able to say that to the Irish speaking community.
In team leis an rún a chuirtas is, agus le brona freisin, agus leis an Quran a dhéan brona an sin. I find it quite condescending that Una would come out in the manner in which she did, and that's a great pity and a disappointment.
Sorry, let's not Can I just say, be careful about the language we're using. You know, and everyone has a right to their opinion, whether you agree with it or not.
Okay, look, just to wrap up on this, I think there probably was some element of confusion between both the motion and between what some of the speakers have said. I don't think there was any intention to say the Irish language shouldn't be used, etc. Because this is a change to the Constitution and it affects what's written down in that document for the future, could I suggest that we just change the motion perhaps slightly, that instead of using the wording that's there, that we say that we encourage, where practicable, the use of the Irish language in the affairs of Commonwealth. Functioning bilingualism, to my understanding, and maybe everybody in the room has a different understanding of it, functioning bilingualism to me would mean we have to operate everything in both Irish and English. So I'm always...
Functioning is just as we can operate it.
But if that's the generally accepted view of it, then fine. But certainly there is no intention whatsoever that we would abandon Irish. And in actual fact, there's a number of people who have held their hands up here today, including Owen, who have said that they will assist in providing translation services to the executive where it's required, in the absence of Padraig, and I'm sure Padraig will continue to do so where you can. So what I would suggest is that perhaps those people could email us after the meeting so that we can continue and have a list of people who can assist in this process, and we will continue as we have done. And as I say, absolutely no intention whatsoever in terms of what's been said here, of anybody to diminish the use of the Irish language. So those in favour of the motion, can I ask you to raise your cards? Those against? Okay, motion passed. Thank you. Okay, motion 4. That the existing wording in the Constitution relating to the Executive Committee proposed be changed to: the Executive Committee shall comprise of no less than 6 and no more than 15 members. Membership to the Executive Committee is determined as follows. The AGM will elect from nominations received: Chairperson, Secretary, Treasurer, Registrar, and 5 ordinary members of the Committee. The Executive Committee may co-opt up to 6 members at its discretion. These co-opted members will not have any voting rights on the Executive Committee. And that's proposed by Ursula Lynch and seconded by Padraig and Clancy. So is Ursula here? Ursula, perhaps you might address it.
Well, this was one of the motions for last year. So, given that it's more or less the same new constitution as what we were proposing, we're happy to drop it. Personally, I would prefer if all of the executive were voted separately, not elected separately. But I realise that practically that very often isn't easy, or somebody starts as secretary and then can't continue. However, it's easier to be able to do it from amongst the group because we know who the chair is. So I'm happy to talk that.
Okay, thank you, Ursula. Just to comment on the points you've made. The normal things in terms of organisations such as this is that the members would appoint the chairman, and somebody would have to stand as chairman. And the reason that the other positions are usually decided by the committee members is that you can't have situations, as you mentioned, where somebody suddenly doesn't become available to do something, or indeed where they turn out to be not exactly the ideal person to actually carry out that role, and the executive might feel necessary to change that person. The reason the chairman is voted is because obviously I suppose the chairman, the members are entitled to have a chairman who's prepared to show a certain direction, but there is the executive itself can exert control over the chairman, because the chairman will only be one person within that, and ultimately the chairman has to abide by whatever the executive committee decides. So, okay, look, that motion has been withdrawn, so we will move on to the next motion, number 5. In Section 6 of the Constitution, Executive Committee composition, that is Section 5 by the way in the new Constitution, be amended as follows. Members of the Executive Committee are elected for a term of 2 years, after which they may seek re-election, but may not hold office for more than 4 consecutive years. And that's proposed by Kate Hayes and seconded by Ursula. So, Donna, maybe to give the microphone to Kate.
Thank you. I know it's put in for last year, but it's just that all my years involvement in various bodies and politics over the years has taught me that if somebody gets elected and they love the job, they stay there. I remember in one fateful day in my life, being the youngest person and the only woman in the room, 45 men, and some of them were standing up talking about electioneering in 1945, and I had to put them right and say, sorry, that was, the war was just ending then, and this is 40,000 and whatever. So I think trying to get people to do anything will be hard enough in the future. So I'm just suggesting that that motion be put, that you elected for a term of 2 years, may stand once more, but not more than 4 consecutive years, because it gives other people a chance to move up. And I think at certain times in our lives, we need the enthusiasm and energy of younger people and some of the wisdom of the most older folks.
Okay, thank you, Kate. If I can play devil's advocate on it and respond first. I know exactly where you're coming from. The difficulty I have is a number of difficulties. What you're talking about is every member of the executive committee, that you can only, you're elected for 2 years, first of all, which means that you won't be voting for a new committee every year. So it will only be every second AGM, and you're effectively voting a chairman in for a period of 2 years, and giving up your right to reject that chairman after a year in office if they don't deliver on the members' wishes. Personally, I prefer annual elections.
The wording is quite right. It should be to overcome office. I'm not saying you can't have an election every year. I'm just saying if you are elected every year, you can do 2 years, but not any longer than that. And then not be longer in the position for 4 years.
Okay, are we talking about office holders?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not members of the committee, it's just office holders. So in other words, that an officer can you're saying executive committee. So no member of the executive committee can serve for longer than
4 years, 2 years at a time, and then 2 more years, that's 4 years.
Okay.
You can be elected every year or not, basically, but not longer than 4 years.
To be 4 terms.
Yeah, 4 terms.
4 years or 4 terms.
Well, I think it's there.
Okay. Right, so just to clarify,
Can I speak? I think this might be unworkable, having been in various organisations before where constitutions have had to be changed, where this has been there, obviously because people are concerned that you end up with the same people over and over again, and and that if they can end up maybe being in a position of power that can, ultimately lead to, trouble. But it's just not workable, because you just end up with the constitutions having to change and revert back to allowing people to retain office if they're elected, because if they're working well and the membership want them to be re-elected, well then there's no reason that they should really be excluded, because say you find that person particularly good, you know, and there isn't somebody else that's as competent and able to do the job, why not let them continue on in the natural course, and people will not elect them if they're not any good.
Can I just say, are we talking about terms of office?
No, it's not terms of office. What it appears to be is that anybody elected to the executive committee can be elected for a maximum of 4 years.
But no, whatever way we word it, it should be certain people, as we know, love being in a position. And we just have to make sure that certain people don't stay there forever and ever and a day. And I don't know how we change it, but I just don't like the idea that certain people, and we know what happens, get into a position and then they know enough to make sure that they're there forever. So I just think there should be some finite term to encourage new people to come along. So I change the wording any way you like, but some form should be possible.
Second use and then a break.
What about saying simply, members of the executive committee can only serve 4 terms.
Success.
Yeah.
Consecutive.
4 consecutive terms.
Yeah.
Full stop. Yeah.
Okay, well, look, we agree stop wording. It'd be a very short one. Members can only serve 4 consecutive terms, whether they be office holders, whether they be committee members, whatever else. Okay? Right. Jim Connolly, Harold, John.
With respect, part of an anti-democratic position to take.
Can you hold on, Jim, until the microphone comes?
Discussing the President of the United States here.
If you wish to change executive members, you do so by way of an election, or you stand yourself for the executive. But the notion that people, however good or however bad, that we should limit their terms of office is anti-democratic. The executive is elected to oversee the affairs of the association, but the ultimate authority of the association are the people in this room, the members. And the members decide who the officers will be, and the association is run accordingly. But the notion of cutting somebody off in their prime, somebody who's doing fantastic work for the association because of a time constraint, to me is ludicrous. I mean, it's a sense of paranoia that I just don't share, that somebody will take over the association or they like the position they're in. I mean, I assume executive officers like the fact that they're executive officers. They like the job they're doing. They're honoured to serve this association. What's the problem with that? Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Jim. I'll just mention, in our residents association where I come from, we actually had a similar provision in our constitution, and we actually ended up having to change it because there weren't people who were willing to come forward and serve on a committee, and you know, we've ended up with the same committee, and they're voted in, year out, because they are delivering, right? And equally, because there isn't people willing to go forward, and that's always a difficulty with every organisation. So there's no right or wrong way about this. My own view is I tend to favour what Jim has said, but look, it's a matter for this room to decide what's appropriate. So if those accept the amended proposition that members, regardless of office or whatever, can only serve for a period of 4 years.
Consecutively, you see.
Consecutively, you can have it ready, absolutely. Yeah. But if members accept that you can only consecutively serve for 4 years, can you please raise your cards? And those against? Okay, so that motion fails. Okay, the next motion is proposed by Ursula Lynch and seconded by Claire Eager, that Section 5 of the Constitution be amended to include the following. Any proposed changes to the Constitution of the 1916 Relatives Association may be made only at the general meeting, special general meeting or AGM. Proposals should be submitted in writing to the Executive Committee 10 days before the general meeting and voted on at it. Yeah. 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 for those of you who looked at the new constitution that we voted in earlier, we have actually included this in it, and we have provided, it's item 4 of the new constitution general meetings, and if you look at section F in it, and so we've actually given 14 days notice. But Ursula, do you want to say anything further on it?
I think the only difference between the old constitution, it wasn't covered in last year in the old constitution, but this one, sorry, I'm just trying to find it, is the fact that the change would be that it can only be amended at an AGM. I don't know if is that covered in the new constitution?
No, it is covered. Number nine, which is on the 5th page of the constitution you have. Alterations, additions or amendments to the constitution can only be made by a majority of 2/3 of the members present and eligible to vote at an AGM.
Okay, that's fine then. I don't see any reason to continue with that motion.
Okay, so
as I say, it was relevant to last year.
that motion is withdrawn because it's covered. Okay. Thank you, Ursula. Next motion is proposed by Paul Green, Chelsea Clancy, and seconded by Ursula Lynch. Final motions, nominations, and all proposed changes to the Constitution be circulated to members of the Relatives Association at least 3 days prior to the special general meeting or AGM where they are to be voted on. Again, it's covered in the existing Constitution that we've just voted. Again, in item 4, where we're actually providing members get not less than 28 days notice of the date and venue of the AGM, etc. And then F motions have to be sent to the Secretary at least 14 days before.
No, but giving back out to the rest of us, the members should receive nothing at least 3 days before.
So we compiled like we did
This time, and you did do that, yeah. But it's just that it's not actually in the Constitution, it should be really.
Okay, well I think in our reading of that, we actually misunderstood that.
I think 7 days would be better. I don't know how that would work, but
well,
at least 3 anyway.
Yeah, on the basis of the way we had to operate this year was under the existing Constitution, which gave us 10 days, right? And we tried to get them out obviously as quick as possible. They had to be compiled, even though we made some errors in them. Apologise again. That we put 14 days into the Constitution to actually make sure we have that time to do it. So.
Yeah, that the membership is informed of all the motions and all at least 3 days before.
Yes, well,
the whole membership.
Yeah.
Yeah. That,
well, I don't think that should be a problem. So anybody in favour of it, raise your cards, please. Those opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thanks, Paul. 8. Again proposed by Paul Green, Chelsea Clancy, and seconded by Colin McSweeney Brewer. Proposals are carried by a 2/3 majority of full members present at a general meeting, whether SGM or AGM. Now, can I just clarify?
That was for last year as well, so I don't know where we're at now.
Yeah, but can I just clarify one thing with you, Paul Green, on that? When you say proposals, I presume you're talking about proposals to amend the Constitution.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about.
Okay, well in that case we've covered it in section 9 of the new Constitution. Amendment number 9. It's proposed by Mel McGibbon and seconded by Rona Egan. That members of this association ensure that it is non-political and non-sectarian, open to all relatives of the 1916 men and women, that the association remains independent of all political parties and groupings, and does not endorse or promote the political views of those parties or groupings or individual members of political party groupings by any means or in any of the association's activities. And that's proposed by Mel McGibbon. So, Mel, do you wish to?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I suppose it's just to make the objectives, the Constitution on item 2 there, the Constitution, item G, more explicit, in relation to political views, and I think that we've seen some evidence of this in the last 2 years, particularly in some of the Facebook postings, and I would prefer that it did not happen on behalf of the Relatives Association in its entirety in the future. People are, of course, open to their own individual views, but not at the expense of the association. And I would also think that the coming years, when we have to deal with the more difficult areas of the divisions that were created during the Civil War, that the Relatives Association, 1916 Relatives Association, will be put under more and more pressure to take sides. It is going to be a very difficult point of time, and I think we have to have a very clear stance on it. And I suppose just the other thing is, just to be very explicit about the term non-sectarian, I would mean that not just in a religious way, but also in terms of people having quite entrenched and sectional views in relation to that. So.
Okay, Mel, thanks very much for that. Listen, can I make a suggestion then, based on if we adopt this motion? What we're talking about is changing section G of 2 of the new constitution. So we need to obviously find a new set of wording for that. So as a suggestion, could I put forward that the 1916 Relatives Association is non-party political and non-sectarian, and will pursue its objectives based on these principles. Would that be the appropriate wording, or does anybody have a better wording?
Say it again.
The 1916, that we replace what's there in G, 2G, and put in place. The 1916 Relatives Association is non-party political and non-sectarian, and will pursue its objectives based on these principles.
Yeah. Sorry, can I just, I think to an extent as well, even though we're we're non-party political, and we want to, we're not promoting any particular party or agenda. I think by limiting maybe sharing information on social media, we could end up, because we did agree that any party that had something that was relevant to 1916, that we could, in an unbiased way, put that information up. So if they were having something around, regardless of who it was, or if they did something that was detrimental to us, that we would put that up. Because if we were limited, say, and, say for instance, a particular government or party at the time did something which was detrimental, we couldn't put up a newspaper article about that because it had a particular party. So I think there could be some problems in terms of, censoring ourselves into the future. So if it's relevant to our activities or something else that could be of interest to members, I don't think we should be hindered in posting, as long as it's not promotion of a particular party.
Sean wants to forward.
I'd like the second part of that motion, because it says does not endorse or promote the political views of parties, groupings, or individual members. Well, I like the word does not endorse, and I think that should be embedded into the aims and objectives, because let's say the political views or the persuasion or the opinions of an individual member might be my opinion, and I don't want the association to endorse their opinion or what they write about my relative. It goes back to my first motion, my motion about the legacy of our dear relative.
Yeah, okay, have you a proposal as to what wording we might actually use?
I like the use of the word does not endorse or promote the political views of those parties or groupings or individual members, and so on and so forth. It might be a long, make it a long aimed objectives, but I think it's a very important phrase within that motion.
Okay, well then, what happens if we amended my earlier proposal to 1916 Relatives Association is non-party political and non-sectarian, and does not endorse or promote the political views of those parties, groupings, or individual members of political party groupings by any means or in any of the association's activities, and will pursue its objectives based on these principles.
Yeah, could I make it slightly alter? I agree with that, but could I suggest that rather than put it into the objectives, that we put it under, here's the Constitution, under the title as a set of principles. And that we say then that these are the principles that guide the work of the association.
Principles, aims, and objectives, all in one thing to start back to wherever you think, but I think that's important.
It's just the wording of it is a bit kind of a bit for the objectives. So I'm just suggesting we put it separately above the objectives.
You know where I'm coming from, and you know what I'm saying.
Can I just say, I think we, this on? I think we do need to say something.
So,
No. Should be a little green button on it.
Hello?
Yeah.
Sorry. I do think, from the practical point of view, as it was in the communications area, that we do need to put something in to this effect, put into our objectives and aims, put, or wherever it's to go. But I think that Donna has a good point in terms of social media. I do think we don't want to become, we should be able to provide information, and we're all adults and we can decide if we want to go with that or not. But to start stopping information coming because it might come from a particular source, I think wouldn't be good. And it's not practical either. If you want to advertise that there's Leo Varadkar is doing something or that Fianna Fáil is doing something, why not be aware of that? You don't have to go with it.
I think
otherwise you have a problem. You're going to be overly censoring everything.
No,
you won't be aware of what's happening.
I think the objective here is not to put any constraint on individual members, but to put it on the organisation and the executive in particular, that the executive won't be going out holding any particular views or supporting any particular political activity. That does not prevent individual members from having their own views that they are fully entitled to express.
No, but I'm talking about our Facebook page, for example. You know, where
we have a policy in respect to that. The media policy is actually up, it's pinned to the Facebook page.
Sorry, Chairman. Next year, I promise I won't sit behind the pillar.
You can always move up on.
I know, I'm trying around. No, just on this, I agree totally with the proposal and the extra words about endorsements and so on. This thing about moving it to principles, because there's principles that will come above this one. I think it's fine in the aims and objectives, otherwise we're going to get into is the thing that we've already incorporated about defending the reputation of our ancestors, is that not a principle as well? So I keep everything, if we want to change it to aims and objectives and principles, fine, but keep everything in one place, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I think that's great. Okay, so look, to the floor. What we're talking about is an amendment to the Constitution, which will read, 1916 Relatives Association is non-party political, non-sectarian, and does not endorse or promote the political views of those parties, groupings, or individual members of political party or groupings by any means or in any of the association's activities, and will pursue its objectives based on these principles. So those in favour, please raise your card. Those opposed? Okay, so that revised motion is passed. Thank you all. Right, next three motions are all related to the GPO, and they're pretty much interrelated. So I propose that maybe they be taken together.
Steve, are you there? You want
Yeah, I'm down the back.
Which one did you want withdrawn? Remember you said
You want one withdrawn?
Yeah, I want to withdraw motion 10, 11 and 12 in relation to the GPO, and the reason being is these motions were carried over from last year's AGM, and just to give you a bit of background information, in 2015 the GPO garrison, the descendants from the GPO, met in Dublin City Mansion House, and we passed a motion that unanimously we wanted a permanent physical roll of honour either in the GPO or its associated museum. Very recently, a delegation representing the GPO have met with GPO management,
and we have presented them with a list, a shopping list of things we'd like to see and follow through. And I don't want to go into any more detail, but all I'd like to say is we'll withdraw motion 10, 11 and 12. Thank you.
Just in supporting him withdrawing, just to reiterate, there was a meeting, Councillor Niall Ring, David Martin and myself with Angus Lafferty last Friday, and just to say that we're very hopeful now of making progress in all those aims and objectives, that he's open to the suggestion of a permanent memorial, and that other suggestions that were brought in by Niall. He did ask, we particularly said that these motions were down by Dave Camartin at this meeting, and that's why it was pertinent that we had a meeting at short notice with him, and that urged him on to do this, and that also other items like having Jimmy Wren's book available in the bookshop, various things like that were suggested, and that we would have a proper roll of honour using Jimmy Wren's book as a roll of honour, as we did at our event, and that we have ongoing communication with them, that we would open up a path of doing that. And I think it was a very productive meeting, and just to say that we're very hopeful that we will actually achieve our aims and objectives. Thank you.
Can I just say one word on that? Yeah, sorry, and thank you both very much, because we've had an ongoing problem in our family. I'm Harry Boland's grandniece, Ned Boland's grandniece, and Barney would not put them on that roll of honour because they didn't get a pension, but Harry was shot in 1922 and Ned was dead by 1928. And we have had an ongoing problem with them over the pensions. I think my son Donica sent you something, but that's going on in Donica. So thank God if you can get them on the list, I'd be very grateful, but not down at the toilets. Thanks a lot.
Is it working? Yeah. Okay, listen, thanks everybody for those comments. The motions are withdrawn, and we don't need to vote on them. I want to say congratulations to Donna, Dave and Neil in terms of the progress they've made on this particular issue. It's taken time. I think the very fact that Angus is down there now has probably helped matters. Okay, we'll move on to motions relating to Moore Street. The first motion, number 13 there, is proposed by myself and seconded by Colin Moore and Maeve O'Leary from Australia. The motion reads, the 1916 Relatives Association fully supports the Moore Street High Court judgment of March 2016. We call on Minister Humphreys again to drop her appeal of this ruling, which reflects the wishes of the Irish nation at home and worldwide, that the entire Moore Street quarter and centuries-old street market is preserved and a legacy is left for future generations of the Irish nation. The appeal is delaying progress on a resolution. A way forward that preserves this unique area can be achieved by bringing together all stakeholders, including non-party political concerned citizens and groups, to save the historic monument, 1916 battle site and street market from destruction. The outcome we seek is a commitment by the Minister, City Council and other stakeholders to establish a vibrant and economically viable historical and cultural quarter on behalf of the Irish nation, a place to remember the sacrifice that led to the foundation of our state by the brave men, women and children of 1916 who had a vision for this nation as set out in the proclamation. We support a resolution that prevents further dilapidation and decay of this historic quarter in Dublin Central, and one that provides much needed amenities in the area, and a pledge to sustain and propel Dublin's unique centuries-old street market trading tradition into a thriving future without further delay, and a solution that benefits the people of Ireland economically, socially and culturally as a mark of respect to the ideals of those who fought and died over 100 years ago. I don't have anything further to say on the motion. I think it speaks for itself. If anybody else would like to comment on it or speak.
I think
the wording, it says it in itself, just to say that I am very much in support of this motion, as I believe with all the GPO garrison is very pertinent to us. I know it is to all of us, but particularly to the GPO garrison, I'm very much
Okay, if nobody else has something to say, can I suggest we vote? Those in favour? Sorry, Jim, you wanted to speak?
We can't see it.
Sorry, we couldn't see him, but Jim Connolly Hearn would like to comment on this motion.
Thanks, Chair. Once again, I'd like to thank the Association for continued support for the campaign. I'm just wondering, Chair, if the representative on the Minister's Moore Street Consultative Group is here to give us a report on progress today.
Unfortunately, John, he phoned me earlier. He's ill. He's going to try and get in if he can get out of the current difficulty he has. So he's not here, but he has filled in the executive committee on the meetings that have taken place, and he keeps us regularly informed of every development.
That's unfortunate, Chair. The position, for the membership to understand it, the current position is that the Minister's Moore Street Consultative Group was set up and finally produced a report securing history on the future development of the area as a battlefield. Since then, that group has been reduced to a working group, which is represented, the association is represented by John Stevenson on that working group. And the aim of that group is to bring, as the motion here before us states, is to bring the stakeholders together. The position about the appeal is we can continue calling for the Minister to drop the appeal as a campaign call, of course. The fact is the appeal is not going to be dropped. The position that we're trying to put forward now is that she parsed the appeal because she's on the public record as saying that she wished, that she was left with no choice but to appeal the judgment in full. She leads us to believe that there are elements of the judgment that she must agree with, and we have to flush that out. So that's the situation, the up-to-date situation. And you'll see, Chair, on the floor that I have a motion supported by Bunchis O'Rahilly and that follows this particular motion. I'm wondering if the proposer and seconder would accept an amendment to their motion, which would now read: the 1960 Relatives Association fully supports the Moore Street High Court judgment of March 2016 and pledge their continuing unequivocal support for association member Colin Moore in the matter of Moore versus the Minister. So you'd be more or less amalgamating those two motions, Chair, if that's accepted to the proposer and seconder. If not, then I can speak on the following motion.
Okay, Colin, is Colin in the room?
Yeah, no, I don't want to be, want to stand to I want to.
Yes, Donna, can you bring a microphone? Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Paul, wait. Donna's just getting the microphone.
I just want the motion number 14 to be withdrawn, and I don't need any the association only supports it.
Okay, well, in that case, we'll vote on number 13 first, and then we do number 14 as it stands. So those in favour of motion number 13, please raise your cards. And those opposed? Okay, nobody opposed. So that motion is passed. Thank you. Motion number 14. Again, I apologise for the correction we need there. It's proposed by Jim Connolly Hearn and seconded by Bunchis O'Rahilly. Members?
Can I just, on a point of order before we take this motion, I have been advised that the plaintiff and the legal team have asked that this motion be withdrawn. Particularly, I won't go into detail as to why, but that it may possibly be damaging in its wording to the ongoing case, which is ongoing. That's why I don't want to go into the actual detail as to why that would be a problem. Solely to say that I want it ruled out of order because it would go against our constitutional aims and objectives. It's in our constitution that we support the protection of Moore Street, and I believe this would do the opposite inadvertently. I don't think believe it's the purpose of it, but legal advice is that inadvertently it may damage the case. Thank you.
Well, Donna, if you're saying that,
Member Waltz is in here. Ask that a motion be withdrawn based on legal advice that nobody has seen except herself. My advice is to the contrary. But irrespective of what the advice is, this motion simply reiterates our position on Moore Street since day one. Since at our very first meeting in this very room, we pledged our support for the continuing campaign to save Moore Street. And we went further than that, Chair. We said we continue supporting the concerned relatives of the signatories to the proclamation in their campaigning for same. Now, recently, a Taoiseach was on the record in answering a question from Jerry Adams as describing different views of relatives in relation to Moore Street. And what this motion does is states clearly the actual position. There are not different views in relation to the future protection and preservation of Moore Street among relatives. There are only 3 relatives groups that I'm aware of, 1916 relatives groups. I happen to be a member of all 3. 1, the concerned relatives of the signatories to the proclamation support the campaign to preserve and protect Moore Street. I'm a member of the 1916 Relatives Centenary Initiative, which produced the only independent group to produce the 1916 programme during the centenary year. We also support the future preservation and protection of Moore Street. This association, through its constitution, has no choice but to support the preservation and protection of Moore Street. And what we're saying here today is that we fully support association member Colin Moore in his continuing case against the state to ensure that that happens. How any member of this association could refuse to support that motion is simply beyond me. Simply beyond me. It would run contrary to everything we stand for.
Jim,
not to support. Now, I have no desire to engage in a debate about this with a member who also is in here and states that she has legal advice to the contrary. If she has it, let her produce it. Let her produce it.
I have this here.
But the motion, Chair, you've had your say, thanks. The motion, Chair, stands as a simple message of support to everybody out there that this association stands fully behind the plaintiff in the action against the minister.
Excuse me, it's incorrectly worded as you named Colin O'Moore, the plaintiff, as a nominee, where in fact, as you see here in the actual...
I've already stated, Chair.
It comes to these proceedings in his own right.
Chair,
he is not a nominee.
Chair, I'm not prepared to enter into a debate with somebody on an amendment. She has proposed an amendment. She's proposed actually that the motion be withdrawn completely. I'm not accepting that proposal.
Okay, Paddy would like to speak.
Paddy Wynn, Forecourse Garrison, ex-member of the committee. I don't believe it's correct that Moore Street, the objective is to preserve Moore Street. It's not in this constitution. Is that correct? That is correct. Secondly, I'm mainly concerned with Forecourts, and I am a relative of numerous 1916 people. I don't know it's the right thing to preserve Moore Street. And I noticed, Brian, your thing there about preserving, I think that's a trading area and things like that. That is beyond the scope of this organisation. I don't know about the battlefield part of Moore Street. I think this idea of preserving Dublin forever and preserving all buildings, as was in the previous constitution, is ridiculous. We're living in a modern country. We need to do something to respect the people who were in GPO Moore Street, but I don't know what that is. So I'll be abstaining from this. But I think it's incorrect to say that the preservation of Moore Street battlefield is in the constitution, so this should be ruled invalid.
Thanks, Paddy. Anyone wants to say something?
Given the contention around this, I would like to refer to the standing orders. I would like to refer to number 7, procedural motions. Just give you a chance to find that. Number 7, procedural motions. And if I could bring you down, if you found it, number 7, has everyone got that? Yeah. So could you look at number F? So a member may move that the motion be referred back to the executive committee. So I heard Colin say earlier, just before that motion came up, his name is in it and he doesn't want it, and I think we have to respect. I take that on board. I think it's important if the person named has trouble with it. So what I would like to propose to the floor is that this motion be referred back to the executive committee for consideration.
Okay, but a motion has been put which takes precedence, so that now has to go before the floor. So those
Chair, if I could just respond again as the proposer to a point made there, that the forecourts is not under the threat of demolition. If it was, I would presume the honourable member would be in support of its preservation and protection.
Don't presume.
Jim,
you wouldn't be.
Okay,
that's fine. Now, Chair, on a point of clarification, it is in the Constitution that we protect and preserve the heritage of 1916. There is no greater heritage, physical heritage or location linking back to 1916 than the last headquarters of the Provisional Government of 1916. The location where 5 of the signatories to the proclamation of the Irish Republic spent their last hours of freedom before they were executed. The notion that you could be a member of this association and dismiss as being of unimportance or minor importance the preservation of the last extant 1916 battlefield in this city is bizarre, is quite frankly, I mean, it must be unheard of. To be in an association that is cherishing the memory of 1916 personnel, but have no particular position on the preservation of the location where the leadership spent its last hours of freedom. Chair, I withdraw the motion. I withdraw the motion rather than have this circus built around it. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you for withdrawing it. I do think it's probably somewhat unfair to say that the association does not favour the preservation of Moore Street or indeed anything else on the basis that we've just passed a motion to that effect. It's unfortunate that Jim has chosen to leave now. But look, he has withdrawn the motion, so...
Excuse me, may I say something?
Mary?
Microphone. Well before the 1916 Relatives Association started, that man fought for the preservation of Moore Street. And there's an awful lot of people in this country, excuse me Don, he wants to see Moore Street preserved. And for the relatives to say they are disregarding it and doing nothing, it's not good for the association or anything.
Nobody has said that. Nobody has said that.
Sorry.
The discussion isn't about whether Moore Street should be saved or anything else. The association is fully behind saving Moore Street. The discussion there was about
motion, and he himself has done more work.
No, I think you're missing the point. We're not talking about saving Moore.
I'm saying that that man himself, well before 1916 Relatives Association was formed, he fought for Moore Street.
Agreed,
so
absolutely.
His family.
Yeah. And the association has just passed motion 13 as well. We have just passed motion 13, which is fully in support of the preservation of Moore Street and fully in support and stands behind exactly what Jim has set out to achieve. The issue of whether the wording of motion number 14, which Jim has now withdrawn, was about certain words that have been used within it and whether they are appropriate or not. There's no further debate on it on the basis that it has been withdrawn, but Colin Moore wishes to say a word on it, so let Colin speak.
I don't really want to speak about it, but in terms of the motion, Brian's motion is perfect. It calls for the appeal to be dropped. It calls for the Moore Street to be preserved. It does exactly what it should do. The other motion just specifically tries to align some individual with a court case, and it's just simply not true. It doesn't do anything other than that, and that's why I want it to be dropped. That's why the legal team wants it to be dropped.
Okay, look, it's a moot point. The motion has been withdrawn anyway. So I think, look, we need to move on. The next motions relate to Glasnevin Cemetery. Number 15, it's proposed by Padraig Clancy and seconded by Colin McSweeney Broad. That the 1916 Relatives Association is deeply offended by the erection of monuments by the state and private bodies such as at Glasnevin Cemetery, which include the names of volunteer dead with civilian dead and British Army dead mixed together without distinction. We believe any such fusion fundamentally disrespects our ancestors, and we seek their removal and replacement by appropriate separated commemorations. So, Audrey, the floor is yours.
I don't really know where to begin with this, but we've had this since last year, and Cathal can't be here today, but he, as he said himself, is still looking for the names of the Nazis on the walls in Britain beside there were dead. You know, it's very offensive. It comes from us, from our walking at these walls that include all the names of the dead. For example, the one in the National Museum of Ireland as well, where everybody's together, and some of our members whose ancestors were killed during Easter week, the lesser known people, were crying in front of the wall when they saw that those who had shot them were honoured right beside them, and that has caused terrible grief, and this is where this is coming from. And apart from it being offensive anyway to many of us, but actually also from the experience of those who were directly related to those that were killed, murdered as it is, on the wall beside those who murdered them. It is actually suggesting that we're all equal. The fact is, the coloniser is not equal with the colonised. The rapist is not the same as the raped. So I feel personally that it's really an interpretation of Irish history that's, they're saying it isn't and that we're all equal, but it is a statement in itself. By putting everything together. I also think if I had civilian dead there and I was related to them, I wouldn't want them with the volunteers and I wouldn't want them with the British Army. So I just think that we need to call for that these are stopped and that in some way you address it. Now we've written to Glasnevin and they didn't come back to the association on that, so that has to be pursued.
Well, look, as I said, speaking earlier, it is something where we have written to them, and we don't intend to let that matter drop. It's something that we find quite sickening, frankly.
Cathal isn't here today, so we need to second one.
I'm happy to second this. I've been very vocal on this, and I would be very supportive of it.
So you pass the mic to Dave then. Yeah.
Well, I don't need the mic. I would say, does Glasnevin receive public funding? Yes.
I assume it does in some shape or form, but exactly not
Some
what
of
that
these
is.
walls from what I understand, we're under the Executive Commemoration Committee. There is a policy there. There's one in Cork, there's one in the National Museum. They're popping up everywhere. So, and they are going to be putting the Latin names on the wall, of course. I mean, there is a legislation in 1917, and they will continue to do the Latin names along with them. So that's the reality, and we do need to. I think we need a concerted effort to do something about that. Some of our motions later will address that too.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I think I'll just, I'll put this to the floor. Does those who were
Sorry,
Michael Geary. Michael first. Oh, sorry. Oh, you have the mic.
Just on the wall in Glasnevin, my great auntie's name is on it. She was 16, shot by the British Army. And going back a few years, I had the privilege to speak to the CEO. And what he informed me of what was going to happen then was the first black pillar, as you go around with the monument, was going to be done for the children's names. It was never a thing. And I was horrified to see my relation's name up there among the dead. I don't think, I'm being honest with you, as far as we're down there every Saturday morning, they're not going to change it. Yeah. And I was horrified to go down and lift young Sean Foster's photograph and my own great auntie's photograph of it when it was covered in paint. I was absolutely disgusted over it. I don't want the wall there, I don't want the names there, but being honest with you, I don't think that they're going to move on that. It's there, it says Tom Ash's name is on it, and it was a Metropolitan Dublin Police name on it for 2017.
Yeah, Paul, listen, I suspect you're right that they won't respond, but I think us as an organisation, I think...
Oh, yeah, and that's what I'm asking, that this organisation doesn't hold them on it.
No, I don't, I think we won't. another speaker, and then Michael as well.
Me again. I fully support the motions, and in addition, I'd like to point out it's actually even worse than we think it is. And I don't think Glasnevin has thought it through. So if we go to the towns, there was no such organisations in black towns, there were special constables. So it's going to go up as constables. It's going to make it look like our ancestors went around shooting policemen all the time, which of course they had to shoot a certain amount, but most of it wasn't shooting policemen. And my uncle, in fact, my uncle's brother, was the CEO in Navan in 1920. He was only 19 himself, and he had to execute a spy. Would that man be up as a civilian? Would this man be down as a person who went around running civilians? Because Fianna Fáil might like to know, because the man went on to be the Minister of Post and Telegraphs, Michael Hilliard. So, and in his own witness deposition, he explained this. And every night of his life, himself and his wife prayed for that man until they'd done the right thing, and prayed for his soul. Well, that's going to go as a civilian. It's much, much worse than it is now. It's going to get 2 or 3 times worse.
I don't think any of us are going to disagree with this. Okay, just getting the microphone to Michael now.
Francis Ross from Dundon. I'd like to say that when we look at the Jewish people and when we see the fight that they have put up, when they put their memorials up, it's for the Jewish people, the people who were in the concentration camps. They do not put up the Nazi people who ran those concentration camps. And everybody admires the Jewish people because they have stood and they have said, this is what happened to our ancestors. Let it be seen that this is the lesson that should never happen again. If we have the colonial forces up on the walls, we are saying that colonialism is fine. It's quite okay to go into another country and take it over. So I think we should learn from the Jewish people who have stood tall and proud for their ancestors.
Thank you for that.
I think that the Glasnevin Trust are very confident and comfortable in their position at the moment because of the extent of support that they have had from the government as a whole and from the whole state apparatus. Now, there was a major campaign, political and diplomatic, to have these memorials put up going way back a number of years. And as previously been said, there are a number of these memorials popping up all over the place. The template for the one in Glasnevin is the one, the so-called Mayo Peace Park down in Castlebar, which is within a couple of hundred yards of Enda Kenny's constituency clinic. And only last December, one of the campaigners for putting up all of these memorials, Mr. Spittick, the brother of the judge, the High Court judge, was granted an OBE on the New Year's honours list for the work that he had done to achieve all this commemoration and all of the rest of it. It was in people can trace back, for example, the Irish Times for the 31st of December last. You'll see photographs of the celebration of the fact down in Kilkenny. Kilkenny, by the way, was the last place to put up in the south. The last place to put up a unionist candidate for election in the south of Ireland. They didn't get on very well. But anyway, the level, political and diplomatic level, the height of it shows that simply making contact with the Glasnevin Trust to have them change their mind is not going to get anywhere. Questions that, like for example, where do they get their funding from, are very, very relevant. And what support is given to them by the local authority, for example. And the other thing is the constitution of the Glasnevin Trust, where it came from. The Committee for Cemeteries in Dublin, or something like that is what they're called. There are quite a number of people who are on the board of all that, as opposed to the trust itself, which is a subsidiary of the company, the original company. The aims and memorandum of association and all of that can be got into in a proper campaign to put pressure on the Glasnevin Trust as it stands, even to the extent of putting in some sort of an injunction to collapse the trust as it stands at the moment. There is writing letters, loads and loads of people have wrote letters to the Glasnevin Trust and got nowhere, and will get nowhere until such time as the trust itself has been disbanded and got rid of.
Thanks for that, Michael. Oh, look, I don't think anybody in this room disagrees with this motion, so look, I'm going to put it to the floor. Those in favour, raise your cards. Those opposed? Unanimously passed again. Right, the next motion is proposed by Owen O'Dooley and Eileen O'Shaughnessy. We, the 1960, it's again related, we, the 1916 Relatives Association, being the principal voice of those volunteers who died in 1916, request the government and all members of the office to proclaim in the Dáil the Glasnevin Trust be required to remove the 1916 remembrance wall without delay, as it causes so much continuing upset to bereaved descendants. We owe our volunteers this respect. We also ask each local authority and local government council in turn to pass and record a motion of support, thereby showing countrywide empathy for this demand. So Owen, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. Owen O'Dooley is my name. I'm possibly going to repeat a few things that have already been well said this evening about today about Glasnevin, so I'll try and get through this quickly. I think we have an opportunity to achieve something here if we have the strength of a strong motion on this lines. What motivates me is not just the anger, but the upset I've seen from so many people I have spoken to about this wall. That's really the first principle here. We are the principal voice of the people who fought in 1916. We are the ones who have the first say what goes on their headstones. Last year, Donna Cooney well publicised the opposition, and she reported it as being deeply insulting and bizarre. But this was dismissed by the Glasnevin Trust. I've written down here the words of their statement because it gives you some understanding. We acknowledge for some time this necrology wall is difficult to accept, but this does not prevent us from hoping that through recording the facts without judgment, a better understanding of the period will emerge. That was their statement. In this, they're assuming some higher level of authority on the issue. They then went on to build the wall. The heading on the wall is Easter Rising 1916, Ireland Mountain Glasgow. This, we all know, is the heading of the proclamation. And below that, they ascribe honour, because putting a name in gold on a piece of marble is ascribing honour, to 17 British Army units and 143 deceased who fought to suppress the Easter Rising. They have no authority to dabble in recording history facts. So whilst they might admit behind closed doors they made a mistake, they will not do this publicly, as we all know. And they certainly will not pull down the wall on their own volition. This will become Nelson's pillar of the 21st century. I believe now it requires a clear, unified direction from the Oireachtas, and hence my motion. I could say with the motion here that if Pádraig Pearse was in the room today, or if he was in the Dáil, what would he say? Our argument is very simple. You cannot name people on memorials without the permission of their families. Who would accept someone adding the names to their grandparents' graves, headstones? I suggest then, and I'm hoping it can be passed, I suggest then we carefully plan the timing of a press release, and in conjunction, a well-composed letter to the editors of the national newspapers. it would be great if we could muster up signatures from the families of all the executed 16 people. Think of the impact that would have. And wouldn't it be fabulous if the county councils around the country endorsed our instruction to the government? So, remind it.
Thank you all. Does anybody else wish to comment on that, or?
So just a small amendment, is the principal applies to volunteers who fought in 1916, not just died in 1916. Although, I don't know if you're...
Yeah, I think that means that one,
Okay, look. Can I put this to the floor? Those in favour? Raise your cards. Those opposed? Unanimous. Thank you all. We're almost there. Okay. Motion 17, proposed by Piers Brew Bruton and seconded by David Canton. The 1916 Relatives Association calls on Dublin City Council and any other relevant body to erect a permanent stone memorial in honour of Padraig McPhairt and the signatories of the proclamation in O'Connell Street in front of or opposite the GPO. So perhaps you'd like to comment, Piers.
Piers wrote actually there was a reference made there to the point I was going to make in relation to being in favour of proposing. From the 21st of December 1921 until just over 50 years ago, the state, particularly in the more advanced years where it had become well established, believed in this great opportunity of having a permanent fitting memorial in O'Connell Street. It had just listened to the people at the time, because I'm old enough to remember what the view was back in 1966 and years prior to that, that if this symbol of British imperialism had been removed from the top of the tier, something more appropriate that would be fitting to the 1916 men and women had been put in its place. That tier would be still there today. But however, that's part of our history. So I think now it's time that the state took their opportunity and put something appropriate in front of the GPO to remember the men and women of 1916. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say something? In regard to this monument in front of the GPO, I think it should be made clear to watch the wording on it, that they don't put the black and tans names on it as well. And another thing, going back to last night, the GPO garrison had a meeting. Marcus took videos. There was someone else down the back doing videos. There was petitions sent around. There was loads of objections. Fell on deaf ears with last night.
Okay. Can I put the motion to the floor unless anybody else has a comment to make? Oh. Councillor Ring.
Yeah, obviously I support that motion, but I just would advise that within the City Council, we can call on Dublin City Council to do it. I've called on them, we've had motions about last Devon, etc. Obviously within minutes of that, we had motions, all fell on deaf ears. But what I would say in terms of just giving a bit of encouragement, as you know, last year we successfully got the name of the East Link, changed it to Tom Clark Bridge. So whether it's a bit of infrastructure or something like that, well, my information now, and we've tried a lot of things for in front of the GPO to the City Council, there's absolute resistance to it. Absolutely, and the Lewis has been cited and everything. They've actually taken monuments out of, like, poor Father Matthew's gone off somewhere, we don't know where he is. Like, they're taking monuments out of O'Connell Street. But look, there are other areas in the immediate vicinity which we're looking at strongly to get memorials like this for Tom Clark, for Pierce, for the Seven Signatures, etc. So I just say there's a lot of stuff going on. Absolutely pass this motion, but give all of these motions being passed, give people like me on Dublin City Council a lot of encouragement and a lot of backup when we go and say, look, by the way, the Relatives Association are also behind that. That's what's going to happen with the Kathleen Lynn proposal tomorrow night. you've no idea the endorsement that, how much that means to councillors, that we can actually say to management, this is by public acclamation and public desire. So I just say, pass the motion, but other things could happen. I don't want to discourage and say nothing will happen in front of the GPO. We'll keep on that, obviously, but I'd be reluctant to say it's absolutely going to happen, but something will happen in the area. So, but thanks for putting the motion to Parish and David. It's an excellent motion.
Thanks, Neil. Look, you'll be asked to vote on this. If it is passed, you'll be assured that we will follow up on it. And with Neil's guidance, Neil is now on the Executive Council Committee of the Association, and we will follow up in every manner which we can do. The outcome, obviously, we'll have to see what happens, and that'll be something that will fall into the Councillor's bailiwick. So, those who are in favour of this motion, please raise your voting cards. Thank you. And those opposed? Okay, motion passed. Next motion is submitted by Seamus O'Dooley and seconded by Claire Eager, that the 1916 Relatives Association would support and pursue a change of the name of Henry Street to the 24th of April Street in remembrance of the 1916 volunteers. Seamus, over to you.
Seamus isn't here, he's not well. So Claire is here, but I think it
falls if the proposer isn't here. Okay, we'll move on. So, motion number 19, that going forward, again submitted by Padraig and Shaughnessy Clancy and seconded by Colin McSweeney Brewer, that going forward, the 1916 Relatives Association seeks the erection of memorials by the state and private bodies, which include the names of the volunteer deceased who died in the pursuit of Irish freedom, be separately recorded from the British Army dead, Black and Tan dead, and civilian dead.
This is just, this was one that we took last year, was put in last year in conjunction with the other one I spoke to a while ago, and it was to actually have that we'd encourage policy which separated the names out, which I think all the meeting here would like, and which the lady here behind me, hello, also suggested in terms of monitoring what memorials do go up. So it speaks for itself really. It's just to have that as a policy that we as an association are seeking the separate commemorations.
Yeah, well, I think if we're following up on the earlier motion in relation to the wall in Glasnevin, because we're obviously going to have to be writing to members of the House of the Oireachtas and to hear a lot of various county councils around the country, I think we will cover the two in one thing so that it's not limited to the Glasnevin wall, it becomes everything.
I just want to question the wording of it. If we separately recorded from the British Army Black and Tan dead and civilian dead, are we suggesting that we record? Well, yeah. So I just like to question the wording.
So maybe we should delete the last
Well, okay, we can
be separately recorded.
not be recorded with. We put it that way.
No, because then it might be happy for them to be recorded.
That going forward, the 1916 Relatives Association seeks the erection of memorials for the state and private bodies, which include the names of volunteers deceased who died in the pursuit of Irish freedom, be separately recorded. No?
Be separately recorded from what?
Include the names of volunteers deceased who died in pursuit of Irish freedom. And the story. And the rest
I'm not.
It makes more sense to say I'm not be recorded with.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of the motion.
Yeah, you're wrong. The mic, it switches itself on and off.
Testing.
No, I would amend that and remove the Black and Tans completely.
Yes.
No one records people like that, except for all.
The reason that I did that is because I have one person on the deck commemorations who told me that it's a very, very high level quality.
No, I understand, not just because with you, it just boils my blood to see them there. No one else would, and I wouldn't include them anywhere other than to say they should be excluded.
Could we just say should exclusively? Should exclusively maybe use the word concern. This goes, not that.
Might be recorded anywhere along
Exclusively, yes. Yeah.
Could I suggest that you just say exclusively honoured rather than separately recorded?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, we hope that amendment, just that they be exclusively honoured. Alright? Those in favour? Those opposed? Motion passes. And finally, we're almost there. The last motion proposed by Mel McGivon and seconded by Ronnie and Ling. That members of this association honour and remember 1916 relative and member of this association, Leo Johnson, who passed away suddenly on 3rd of July 2017. Leo was strong in the aims of the association, a dedicated Republican supporter of the Moore Street campaign, author of Pierce's Own Story of Company E, 4th Battalion Welsh Volunteers. Two of his own relatives were part of that group who mobilised in Rathfarnham, fighting from the GPO during the Easter Rising, and of who the vast majority were part of the men in Wynn in Moore Street. So, over to you, Mel.
Thanks very much. I suppose it's just primarily to say what I've outlined there and to record, particularly Leo Johnson, and I appreciate at the start of the meeting also that the other people who are members of this association who are deceased and passed away. Joe Kelly, particularly known as well. And I think it is appropriate for this association to respect and honour its active members now who may pass away, as happened here. Particularly, Leo Johnson was a very active supporter of the aims of the association here, and along with ourselves, campaigners on Moore Street, played a very active role. And it was a very fine book you produced late last year, going through all the members of the E-Company, Pierce's Own, the majority of whom ended up in Moore Street. So I very much appreciate the motion of the association to be carried.
Okay, well, look, I think the easiest way to do this is that certainly at AGMs, where we are aware that somebody has passed away, I think it is appropriate that we remember them and honour their contribution and their family's contribution to the association. We did that today with those who did that and had passed away during the course of this year. And I think it's something that we should continue to do.
Is it that we'd be able to get maybe the names of the deceased and put them on our website when they die, or that? I was very upset that I wasn't aware of the death of Kieran and Paddy's father. And a number of people in our group would have gone to that funeral, But is there any way we can try and communicate that as best we can? We had several members.
We would have to have the permission of the families, but if the family is concerned, wanted us to communicate
as members
that
of
information out to members, but of course we're more than willing to do so.
And Liam Dempsey died in our group, and he was responsible for the finding of our plaque.
Yeah, but as I say, look, if the families requested of us, we will do so. Right. So, all in favour? Anyone opposed? Okay, motion is passed. To move on to any other business, I know Paul Callery wishes to raise an issue with us, so.
I was just say, I have two things. One is an invite to all the members of the Relatives Association from Finglas Historical Group and the Renewal Group out in Finglas. We're having a commemoration for Dick McKee, Paddy Clancy on the 19th of November at 1 o'clock in Finglas Village. And he just wanted me to extend. I know they're going to send Brian an invitation as well, but and you're all more than welcome to come down to a colour party and a few reads being led. The other thing I was asked this morning, it's at 1 o'clock in Finglas, yeah. They're assembling at about 12:15. There'll be a colour party there and a few speakers. The other thing I was asked by a chap before I came in this today, is there anything in the future going to be looked at to incorporate the relatives of the Ward of Independence to the association, so other people could join?
Okay, well, two things. One is, if you send Una details of the event in Finglas, right, we'll mention them out to everybody so that they have it. As Paul says, everybody here is invited to attend that event. In relation to broadening the membership, absolutely, we've said it here already today. We would like people to talk to their friends and relatives who have an interest in this, particularly if they are relatives, that they sign up to it. In terms of Board of Independence and participants within that, a lot of those who fought in 1916 would have been participants in the War of Independence, so there is an element of overlap anyway. But we're primarily the 1916 Relatives Association, but we also provide associate membership, because there's interlinkages between all these events, to be honest. I mean, one thing has led to another. So people are free to join up as associate members. And we would encourage people to be associate, because they have things to say, and they have a voice. Marcus?
How you doing? Just on that point, just two quick things. One is, since Paul has said this, I want to say this, that my talk, I'm doing a talk next week with Joe Connell about Michael Collins and War of Independence, and he also fought in 1916. And just as you know, I'm still ongoing with Easter Rising Stories video series, so if any 1916 relatives want to get in contact, please do. You can talk to me. Okay?
Send me the info, Marcus, and I'll send Jeff Paul's.
Will do. And well done getting through the issue.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. Marcus has done great work over the last number of years. I think Neil wants to say a word. Is there a microphone to be passed to him?
You should never actually give a politician a microphone, but however, just as we conclude the AGM and Gachlin a Hánig an seo agus chuir takeíocht domsa people are on a committee or on a corda. I really believe we owe the outgoing committee, of which most are back again, obviously, a huge debt of thanks, because they took over under such difficult circumstances last year, and yet they had 4 wonderful events. They've run a great AGM, and I think they're unsung heroes. And I know that I'm very privileged and pleased to be on the committee, and I look forward to working with them. But I think everyone here, we really should give them our appreciation, because what they've done for us in the last year, we've no idea.
Thank you for those kind words, Neil. Yeah, look.
As a member of the committee, can I particularly thank yourself, Brian, for a very well run AGM, and for the work that you and Noreen and Una have done in preparation for this, and it has gone very well. Thank you for your clarity at the beginning, by the way, now as well. So we're happy with everything as well here. And also just to say that the 4th Battalion, or the South Dublin Marmalade Garrisons, will have a mass commemorating the men and women who were in those garrisons on the 26th of November at 7 o'clock in Mount Argus Church. I'll send the information to them. I'm just saying it here now for people as well. Okay, thanks very much to you all.
Look, thanks for the kind words. Thanks to everybody for coming along today.
Yeah, agus Jeremy, go marry me, or not sure reach.
Okay, listen. Thanks everybody for coming along. I think we had a good AGM, and we made progress. We have a new constitution that is now workable. Maybe because Wynn's been very kind to us in giving us the hotel here today at quite a reduced rate for a city centre hotel. And I hope that some of you might go down to the bar where we can join you and give the bar some of our business and have the opportunity to have a chat and socialise with each other. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Huh?